China's rapid economic growth over the past few decades has been nothing short of remarkable. The country has lifted millions out of poverty and transformed itself into a global economic powerhouse. However, beneath this facade of prosperity lies a stark reality that is often overlooked. Homeless youth, indebted adults, and abandoned elders have exposed a disturbing irony of the overall picture of China's current socio-economic situation. So why is an Asian superpower that boasts the world's second-largest economy still struggling with such profound social problems? But before we start, please take a moment to like and subscribe to our channel, Facts About China. Thanks a lot for your support. Youth unemployment in China's booming cities reveals a disconnect between the government's anti-poverty claims and the real struggles faced by millions of young people. In Guangdong Province, China, a cluster of young adults live beneath an underpass, sustaining themselves with simple meals while lounging on the ground. Some pass the time by live streaming or spontaneously dancing. In a video, auxiliary police are shown checking the area and conversing with the group, but the young people pay no attention to them. The streets of Shenzhen are crowded with homeless young individuals. Despite this, the Chinese Communist government frequently asserts that homelessness is now facing a problem in the United States, not in their country. In Guangzhou, a job fair reveals a large crowd of job seekers, but there are no recruiters present as companies have stopped participating. This reflects the harsh reality of the situation. According to recent data from the National Bureau of Statistics, the unemployment rate for young Chinese individuals aged 16 to 24, excluding students, has reached nearly 49%. There aren't many jobs, and while those in the city who have retired parents may rely on them for assistance, young people in rural areas without such backup find themselves unemployed and they turn into the homeless themselves, living miserably on the streets of the city. Many have no place to go back to. The root causes of this issue are multifaceted. The rapid pace of urbanization has led to a mismatch between the skills of the workforce and the demands of the job market. Many young people are educated, but they lack the practical skills needed for existing jobs. Additionally, the economic slowdown and the impact of global trade tensions have further exacerbated the unemployment crisis. The government's efforts to create jobs have not kept pace with the growing number of job seekers, leaving many young people in a state of limbo. While urban areas grapple with youth unemployment, rural regions face their own set of challenges. This is a remote village located in the northern mountains of Henan Province, captured in a photograph by a migrant worker coming back home. The scene is incredibly sad, and it represents a home that can never be revisited. In urban areas where they can't find stability, and in homes they can't go back to, many people struggle to survive. The elderly in these rural areas continue to work physically without any retirement benefits or health insurance. They have to work every day just to survive. When they get sick and can't afford medical care, they are left with no option. The Chinese government frequently touts its extension of Social Security to rural areas, claiming that 170 million farmers now receive pensions. However, the actual amount they receive each month is minimal. According to some sources, as of 2024, the average monthly pension for rural residents in China is approximately 123 yuan, meaning around $25 per month, and this is only for those who have contributed to Social Security. This amount is significantly lower compared to urban pensions, which can range from roughly 3,000 yuan, meaning $625 in less developed provinces, to about 6,000 yuan, $1,250 in major cities like Beijing and Shanghai. Rural pensions can sometimes be as low as nothing. It's impossible to sustain a living on 123 yuan. As a result, elderly individuals who are still able to work are forced to take on extremely difficult and dangerous jobs to support their families. Seeing an elderly migrant worker like this struggling in a narrow concrete pipe is distressing. Who would willingly put their life at risk in such a manner if they were not compelled to do so to survive? Not only that, according to statistics recently, there have been nearly 300 million migrant workers in China. Due to the household registration system, they and their children often lack access to public services like healthcare and education, and most are not covered by national pension or disability insurance plans. When these workers lose their factory jobs during economic downturns, they are not counted in the official unemployment statistics. Thus, the actual number of unemployed and impoverished people in China is far higher than official figures suggest. The documentary 30 Years of Labor conducted interviews and surveys revealing that 60.7% of migrant workers continue working until they are no longer able to. Some people question why homeless youths do not take up delivery jobs, which have been advertised as lucrative opportunities. Let's examine the earnings of a delivery worker on a weekly basis. It's quite disheartening. According to a delivery man, we had a new team member at our delivery station who worked for 7 days, and when I saw his paycheck, it was really disappointing. Let me break it down for you. Despite completing 195 orders, which is an average of over 20 orders per day, his earnings were heavily impacted by deductions. These deductions included 34 yuan for insurance, 280 yuan for materials such as a storage box, helmet, and uniform, and 267 yuan for accommodations in our station's dorm. Additionally, he had to pay 594 yuan for the rental of a bike and battery, which is likely a monthly expense. In total, deductions amounted to 1,175 yuan, leaving him with a salary of only 1,263 yuan. Therefore, for his first 7 days, he actually took home only 97 yuan, which is just over 13 yuan per day. He works for at least 9 hours a day, earning approximately 1 or 2 yuan per hour. With such low earnings, it's difficult to afford basic necessities. On the other hand, based on the poverty line established by the World Bank in Washington, D.C., more than 40% of the population in China is classified as living in severe poverty, while 80% are centered as poor. Statistics show that nationally, there are over 800 million individuals in debt, with 420 million at risk of failing to meet their obligations. The amount of unpaid credit card bills has surpassed 200 billion yuan. The number of individuals who have defaulted on their payments has exceeded 8.61 million and continues to increase. The total personal debt has reached 350 trillion yuan, averaging 140,000 yuan per person. Nowadays in China, with unemployment rates on the rise, 85% of families earn less than 50,000 yuan annually, and many lack even 1,000 yuan in liquid assets, let alone savings. According to data from the International Monetary Fund, the GDP per capita in the US stands at $85,300, while China's is only $13,100, placing it 75th globally, behind countries like Mexico, Kazakhstan, and Malaysia. The Chinese government asserts that only 0.04% of the population lives below the poverty line. However, this poverty line is significantly lower than international standards. Based on 2010 prices, China's official poverty line is an annual income of 2,300 yuan, approximately $340, which is far below the World Bank's international poverty line of $1.90 per day. In 2021, 47% of China's population lived on $10 or less per day. If the US poverty line from 1960, which is $21.7 per day, were applied, 80 to 90% of China's population today would be considered poor. Furthermore, there is a significant difference in income between urban and rural areas in China, with urban residents earning 80% more than their rural counterparts. While average income figures may hide the large number of people living in extreme poverty in rural areas, the perception of poverty being limited to remote mountain regions is changing. The Chinese government previously claimed to have lifted all poor populations out of poverty, effectively eliminating poverty in the country. In 2021, Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping announced that all 99 million rural poor people in China had been lifted out of poverty, leading to the removal of poverty labels from 832 counties and the delisting of 128,000 poor villages. 3 years have gone by. Now, let's take a look at the perspective of Chinese netizens in 2024 to understand the actual situation of poverty alleviation in mountainous areas. In the Dalian Mountains of Sichuan, one of the poorest regions in China, a man involved in public welfare work expresses, "It's unbelievable unless you witness it yourself. It's difficult to imagine that people still live in such dire poverty. The scenes I'm witnessing are deeply distressing. The children here are living in extreme poverty. They lack proper clothing and food, and access to quality education is almost non-existent. Some people believe that despite their poverty, these children also have dreams and aspirations for the future. In China, who hasn't had dreams during their youth? However, the rigid social class structure has already predetermined that these children have no prospects. Some argue, haven't numerous successful individuals emerged from the mountain valleys and joined the middle class in China? It is accurate that during the reform and opening up era, foreign companies and online enterprises grew quickly, allowing educated and skilled individuals to amass wealth through lucrative salaries and earnings. This paved the way for entry into the middle class, even for those from disadvantaged backgrounds. However, are these individuals still thriving today? In recent times, as a result of China's real estate and stock market manipulations, these individuals have seen their wealth diminish significantly, leaving them burdened with overwhelming debts and among the most impoverished in society. Despite the Chinese Communist Party's efforts to set a lower poverty threshold to show progress, the truth is that by their own criteria, more than 80% of the population has long been living in poverty. A popular saying now goes, the rich lose their wealth through trust, the middle class through borrowing, and the poor through peer-to-peer lending. Even if you believe your assets are safe, the authorities have been monitoring you closely and always find a way to take your money for themselves. In their eyes, you are simply a source of exploitation. Investors often refer to China's share market as the country's largest casino, while homeowners feel deceived into mortgages, calling it the biggest fraud in China. Over the past 30 years, 200 million stock investors have often lost everything, passing on their experiences to the next generation. Meanwhile, 400 million mortgage holders find themselves trapped in a cycle of housing loans within just a few years. If one doubts the skill of stock investors based on their financial performance, it's worth noting that even BlackRock, a renowned global fund management firm with top traders, has faced challenges in China's share market. Their annual returns of 50% in the US stock market contrast sharply with their less successful experience in China, resulting in the abrupt dismissal of their China region head. Before leaving, Tony Tang, the former executive, famously commented on the A-share market, stating, "You can't buy enough. You think you're purchasing stocks, but what's actually being sold is the company." When Chinese companies go public, it's not primarily for expansion, but rather for selling off the company and cashing in. In other words, the A-share market serves as a financing platform for the Chinese government, using investors' funds to address various financial needs. According to data in the last 8 years, the Chinese Communist Party has obtained 20 trillion yuan from the stock market through different levies and charges. This includes 1.5 trillion from stamp duties, 1.8 trillion from brokerage fees, 2.8 trillion from initial public offerings, 3.3 trillion from major shareholders reducing their holdings, and 9.7 trillion from listed companies refinancing. Additionally, convertible bond issuances during the same period brought in another 1.3 trillion yuan. Over the past 8 years, a total of 13.4 trillion yuan was paid out in dividends. But it's important to note that a 20% tax was also deducted. As a result, investors were only able to recover 10.8 trillion yuan from these dividends. This indicates that investors have experienced a loss of nearly 50% over this period. In 2023, records show that the Chinese Communist Party took around 3 trillion yuan from the A-share market, and state-owned listed companies withdrew as much as 1.3 trillion yuan. By the time unfortunate investors realize what has occurred, their invested funds have already disappeared. This represents the harsh reality underlying the situation of the stock market in China being consistently stuck at 3,000 points. As we enter 2024, the Chinese Communist Party's financial pressures mount, which have led to an observable increase in the speed of exploiting the stock market. On June 24th, the Chinese stock market faced another crisis with widespread losses. A young investor remarked that over 5,000 stocks dropped in the two markets, while only 327 stocks saw an increase. Additionally, the editor-in-chief of Global Times, Hu Xijian, mentioned that he struggled to log into his brokerage app to trade that morning due to its sluggish performance, which severely impacted his ability to operate. But it is worth noting that Hu Xijian had previously stated that he never sells once he buys. Therefore, it raises questions as to why he attempted to log in. The broker's response was blunt. "You want to run? I'll just pull your internet connection." You want to log in, want to sell? I won't even let you log into your account. It's gotten to this point now. As evident, Hu Xijin, a figure of significant influence, is not exempt from the Chinese Communist Party's disregard. Anyone venturing into the A-share market, be it grassroots investors, mid-level investors, or foreigners, faces exploitation. Trying to escape from this situation is nearly impossible. In conclusion, China's anti-poverty facade hides a grim reality of rising poverty and social inequality. Homeless youth, indebted adults, and abandoned elders are the faces of this hidden crisis. Despite the government's claims of economic progress and poverty alleviation, the reality is that many individuals and families continue to struggle with unemployment, inadequate social support, and financial instability. The challenges faced by different demographics highlight the need for more effective and inclusive policies that address the root causes of poverty and provide meaningful support to those in need. As China continues to grow and develop, it must ensure that its economic success translates into improved living conditions for all its citizens, not just a privileged few. That's the wrap for today's video. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the content, please give us a thumbs up and share it with your friends and family. And don't forget to subscribe to Facts About China and turn on notifications to stay current with all our future uploads. Your support is incredibly important to us. Until next time, take care and farewell.